Hi, and welcome to Hack Your Career. I'm Keith Wilson, Director of Cybersecurity Education for AttackIQ. In this live stream, we're trying to introduce you to all sorts of careers in cybersecurity by sharing the stories of the people behind those careers. Today's guest is here to talk about their recent entry into the world of cybersecurity. Please join me in welcoming Josh Binsfeld to the stream. Josh, welcome.
Thank you. That music is awesome.
You know, if you like nothing else about this stream, you have to love the music.
Right? It made me
It's
think of video games and TV shows of the late 80s, early 90s, and I was just like, yeah, this is good stuff.
it's nostalgic, it's energetic, it's the perfect stream music. So yeah, and our producers pick that. It's great. Gets you pumped up for the show. Now, Josh, I think you're in a position a lot of our viewers want to be in, and that's that you're new to the industry, but you have a job. You actually
Yeah.
you have a job in cybersecurity. I'm going to ask you some questions about the job hunt later, but first I want to know, why cybersecurity? What made you go from finance to security?
So I went to college and originally went for computer science. Realized how much I hate programming. Um, and I mean, I grew up with a love of computers. We got our first computer when I was in 8th grade. And just kind of, loved tinkering with them, loved learning more and more. And, realized as I got older that security is super important. I mean, you keep hearing about all these ransomware cases and malware and everything else. And it's just super interesting to me. And it was an opportunity for me to get into technology and be able to continually learn. Like I love just learning new things. And in finance, you can kind of do that.
Mhm.
But it kind of stagnates a little bit. With
Yeah,
this,
I
technology
mean,
is just always changing.
yeah, there's only so many different types of financial vehicles
Right.
that, and obviously they can create more, but it doesn't evolve as quickly as technology does. So I
Right.
get that.
Like, I started off as kind of a banker over the phone and transferred to a banker in a branch, worked my way up, got some securities licenses so that I could, gain more knowledge because that's the only way I could really do it
Mhm.
was to get, my Series 6, 63, 65. I ended up getting my Series 7 and worked with high value clients, and it wasn't as fulfilling as I was hoping.
Yeah,
Um
so I want to slow down for a minute there because I know not everybody's going to be familiar with financial terms and stuff like that. So essentially, these are kind of like certifications that we'd have in cyber, except
yeah,
they're required by law in order to do certain jobs.
correct.
It's not like it's not like where a bank would post a position and say, highly requested you have this. It's no, by law you have to have this thing,
Correct.
right? So
So, like,
it's
in
much
order
different in terms of
to
that.
talk about stocks and bonds and mutual funds, you have to have these certifications.
Mhm.
And if you don't, not only can you get in trouble, but the bank can get in trouble. And by in trouble, I mean millions of dollars in fines. Like, for example, there was a bank that had I think it was 63 billion in fines
Mhm.
where, they're not following the law.
Yeah.
And it's very particular about what you can and cannot say as well. So yeah, it's interesting. People will talk about some certifications and how difficult they are, and you only get so much time to do these. And I'm like, man, I had to do this test, the Series 7. It was They gave you 6 hours minimum to do it.
Mhm.
Um, and you got a break in between, but it was like 3 or 400 questions, and
So
most people don't pass.
I can imagine that. Now I wanna ask this too. So from the you're making this transition, right? I want to make sure I understand the story first
Mhm.
before we go too far. Computer science major. You actually were a computer science major at one point in college, but decided programming is not for me.
Yep.
I'm assuming that the majority of the courses were programming focused then for that computer science degree.
Yeah.
Now, to an extent, that has changed, I think, a little bit. We're seeing more security programs pop up in universities, but they tend to be tied to the business school and not like the computer science school. Is what at least what I've seen anyway.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm guessing that kind of made you go, okay, well, programming isn't for me, computers aren't for me. I'm going to do finance. That seems cool.
Well, and it's funny because I didn't go to finance right away.
No, okay.
So I left school. I actually ended up building commercial pools and spas for 3.5 years.
Okay.
And then I built pole barns for 2 years. So like the sheds on farms. And then I fell off a barn roof in November of 2011. Um, Ended up becoming scared of heights after that. And then I was in the car business for about a year and a half. And
In the
then I
car
ended up in
business.
finance.
Buying, selling.
Yeah, so I was a salesman,
Okay.
and the first one I went to, we also did all of the finance stuff ourselves. We didn't have finance managers like a typical car dealership,
Mm-hmm.
which is how I was able to utilize that to get into
Okay.
finance.
Okay. So were there any moments, let's fast forward here now, you're working in finance. Were there any moments while you're in finance where you had these hints of like, oh, security would be cool, like I could apply it to this thing that I do at the bank all the time. Like I see where the security fits into this. Were there any moments like that?
Uh, Later in my career there, I started like looking and realizing that I wasn't as passionate about finance as I thought I was, and I wanted to kind of get back to my roots. And then, I mean, we'd end up getting, the phishing test emails all the time, um, and just seeing more and more of different cyber attacks against banks, and things that we need to do to make customers safe. And I mean, for instance, we would have customers come in where they would get a call, sign in on their computer, and these people would move money around and they thought that they lost all this money, and I'm like, no, it just moved around. And you're just sitting there thinking like, there's got to be something that we can do for this.
Mm-hmm.
um and when COVID hit, it kind of gave me a chance to take a step back and look and kind of remember, hey, this is what I wanted to do, however many years ago.
Sure.
Let's see what I can do to get into that.
So what were your first steps then? You made the decision. I was interested at this one point. I'd like to try it again. What did you do? What'd you
I
do
went
then?
to YouTube.
You went to
uh,
YouTube.
I immediately went to
What'd you
YouTube.
find on YouTube?
Found a couple of well-known YouTubers, kind of talking about like what they do, and I'm like, yeah, this is really cool. Found a couple of like free courses on there, and I'd start watching it, and I'm like, yeah, this is definitely what I'm into. Um, I started learning a little bit of Python that I didn't hate as much as C++, so that wasn't so bad.
Right.
And then I found a video by David Bombo with Neil Bridges,
Mhm.
and that one, I don't know what it was about that video, but it really resonated with me, and I was able to join a couple of live streams that Neil did, and join his Discord community, and kind of get hooked up with him and learn from a ton of people that were in cyber and were also working towards transitioning to a cybersecurity career, um, and just kind of build that.
So I want to pause here for a minute because I think these actions are incredibly important for people who may be watching the stream right now trying to do what you just did, right? These are recent relevant actions. So let's make a checklist, a bulleted kind of mental checklist here. You you found a mentor.
Hmm.
Even it and people get confused. They think a mentorship requires a two-way relationship. I can be mentored from somebody by a book, right? I can be they can that's how we learn from history, from people
Right.
who lived long ago. We can read books. I can watch videos that people have done. So it doesn't always have to be that traditional mentor-mentee relationship. You found a mentor, you found somebody who taught things in a way that clicked with you. and you continued to follow that.
Right. Like, I don't even think I had a conversation with Neil for probably 3 or 4 months after I started,
Yeah.
like, watching his videos and watching his live streams and stuff.
Okay. So
Maybe
that's
it
check
wasn't that
one.
long, but
Check two, you joined a community.
mhm.
How helpful was that community? Did that help
It was
you?
super helpful. Like, I went in, like, I mean, obviously not having any experience in cyber whatsoever other than, "Hey, I watched some videos." And they were super welcoming, willing to answer my questions, not, telling me I'm an idiot. Um, and for somebody that's new to something like that, I mean, that's huge. And each community is gonna be different. Like, I've joined a couple other ones that I just didn't gel with.
Mhm.
And the one with joining Neil's community, I gelled with that one. So, I mean, it's also join several ones and see which one works best for you because there's not a end all be all to that.
Sure. Yeah. Let me ask this too. Because it's a question I'm gonna ask you a question I get asked a lot. Where do I start? Like you're coming into the world of cybersecurity. How did you pick a starting point?
So, for me, I it's a question that does get asked a lot. Um, it's hard to determine what you're really passionate about when you're first starting out because there's
Mhm.
so many different facets of cybersecurity. And the quote unquote sexy one or the one that's, put forward most is going to be red teaming or pen testing.
Sure.
And I think it's important to kind of play around with that and kind of get an idea of it. But open your eyes to a bunch of different things. See what else might be available. Like, one of the other things I did was I'd go onto Try Hack Me and I'd do some of their rooms. And you think, hey, it's Try Hack Me, it's only going to be pen testing, but you learn about a bunch of different areas of cyber. You'll learn blue teaming, you'll learn defense, you learn, just general knowledge, and it kind of gives you a better idea to decide which way you want to go.
Sure. Yeah, I think that is what makes it so hard to answer that question
Mhm.
because you're essentially telling somebody, "Well, you want me to pick your happiness for you," and
Right.
you don't even know what'll make you happy because you're at the point to where you don't know what you don't know about cybersecurity.
Try to consume as much information about the different areas as you can and
Mhm.
see which one resonates with you the most and go down that.
Here and I'm gonna give a tip too for types of jobs that people can look for that are new to cybersecurity. It's one that, people don't often think of, and it's actually how I think I transitioned because before I started working technically in what I would call a cybersecurity role, I was doing a help desk role. I
Mm.
worked for a help desk. So, my first cybersecurity role, though, was working for a cybersecurity software vendor in support. Right? I think support roles at cybersecurity software vendors are great entry points into security. You have to have, you still have to understand how to troubleshoot, and if you have a basic understanding of that, you can build your skills and get better at it. But you're also going to talk to all sorts of different people that work in security in different job roles, and you'll get to learn more about those as you're learning all about different security things. So that's my little tip is,
Well, and
check out the
with that,
vendors.
you can really work on your soft skills
Mhm.
because those are things that you can't just read a book and learn. Those are
Right.
things you have to develop and kind of experience, um, where you can learn, "Hey, I've gotta do this command to do this." That you can read or watch a video to do. Soft skills, it's all about practicing that, and in that support role, like you said, you're gonna talk to a bunch of different people, and you're
Mhm.
gonna learn quickly how those people wanna be talked to, because if you don't, you're gonna be hurting.
Yeah, you sound like you've had support roles before.
I so it's funny because, I mean, in finance, I sat down, I had customers and clients all day long,
Mhm.
and you would speak to one differently than you would the other because you had built that rapport and that relationship with them and knew, "Hey, this way of talking to them does not resonate with them. We need to present this information this way."
Sure. Now, Josh, you're currently a cybersecurity staff consultant at EY, Ernst Young. Can you tell me a bit about what you do in that role?
So I started out, I was hired to do threat hunting. What's nice though is it kind of allows me to get into a bunch of different areas. So I'm in the threat resiliency area. Well, they'll do incident response planning. They'll do threat hunting. They'll do pen tests. They'll do all kinds of different things that kind of gain or give you that knowledge to see where you want to go more. So right now I work with a team anywhere from like 2 to 7 people, and we'll have different clients that we will look at their environment, go in, run different searches, look for different things in their environment, and then present our findings to them, typically on a weekly basis.
So it sounds like it's not necessarily a specialist role. I mean, threat hunting can be a very specialized type of thing, but the way you're describing it, it seems a bit more of a generalist because you said you get to kind of see how this gets handed off to other areas or how you interact with other areas. Can you talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah, so in the team that I'm with, you can say, "Hey, I want to go and experience this over here." Say it's incident response planning. You can say, "Hey, I want to get into that. I want to learn a little bit more about that." And they'll try to find a client that they can bring you
Okay.
onto that engagement, and you can learn that. And then you can go back, to threat hunting if you want, or you can then, "Hey, I want to go check out this maybe pen testing. I want to try to get into this. Can I sit down with a couple of people and experience what this is like?" They're very willing to let you get experience in different areas so that you're able to find what you enjoy the most.
So can you tell me a little bit about what the job hunting process looked like for you to getting this job?
It was a lot of fun. Um,
I feel like I hit a sore spot on that one.
I was probably job hunting for about 3 or 4 months. Um, I would go to, Indeed, CyberSN, LinkedIn, and I would try to find the jobs that in my experience, I was about 70 to 75% of what they were looking for. Um, so with that, I don't have a bachelor's degree. I dropped out of college. So when I'd see that, I'd be like, okay, well, this is difficult. Let me see if I can tailor my internship experience with Neil into, hey, I've got this experience instead of a degree.
Mhm,
And then, hey, I've got this experience in finance, as far as like some of the soft skills and stuff that I learned, and the fact that I'm able to go and get these tougher to get certifications, and it's like, hey, I can learn this,
mhm.
and kind of trying to tailor resumes and everything to that specific job. It's not the easiest thing. It's super frustrating. I mean, I kept a spreadsheet of jobs that I applied to. When I applied to them, when I got an email from them saying that I applied to them, when I either got an interview scheduled or a rejection. And
So you were super organized with this.
if I wasn't going to be, I wasn't going to keep on top of it. I would have just completely spaced. Like I could have applied to a job and completely forgotten that I applied to the job. And then
How many jobs were you applying to at the time?
I was I had a goal of applying to anywhere from 5 to 10 a day,
Okay.
um, and it wasn't always the easiest thing to find that fit what I was looking for, as far as me being able to meet the requirements.
Got it.
So some days, it was 2, others days it might have been 15, but it kinda averaged out to about 5 or 10 a day.
5 or 10 a day, applying
Yeah.
to 5, 10. So that's a kind of another checkbox too that I want people to think of is like this isn't a send out us if especially when you're in a position where you don't necessarily meet the requirements that people are
Mhm.
asking for. It's okay to go beyond the requirements. And I'm in the same boat as you. I don't have a bachelor's degree. I have an associate's degree. That's the furthest that I made it in my college education. Um, but you can still use experience and leverage that, right?
Yep.
But you want to make sure that you're applying, because some companies are just going to be like, no, just you don't tick that box, and unfortunately that's just something you have to accept and move on. You
Yep.
tried, you know, go on anyway.
It's
But
not personal. It's just, you
it's
know,
just it's the way it is. It's
exactly.
reality.
Yep.
It's the reality that you're not going to change, right? So having and doing that constant 5 to 10 a day. Now, I would argue an organizational psychologist would actually probably tell you that that builds resilience, right? You're building this mental endurance almost of applying, checking back. It's not, it's not a fun process. You could tell by the face you made when I
Yeah.
when I
Yeah.
brought it up.
Yeah. I, I
The
mean,
rejections, that's another
I
thing
want to say
too.
I don't recommend it, but you're not going to get into the industry unless you do it.
Right.
And it's tough. It you have to try to take your emotion out of it, and that
Yeah.
is not always easy.
So did you do anything at all to stand out when you were applying for these jobs or during that time even?
I would work with network. So I'd look on this job and see if I could find who the recruiter was.
Mhm.
I'd go to LinkedIn, I'd find them, I'd connect with them and send them a message and say, "Hey, I just applied for this job. I'd love to take, if I could take 5 minutes of your time and talk to you about this job and see if I'm the right fit." So I
Yeah,
would try to leverage networking with the people that were actually doing the hiring so that I could try to stand out more because I knew I wasn't necessarily going to hit the requirements that they had on that job application.
sure. Now, what about when you're looking at these positions and you're deciding whether to apply or not? Is there any sort of rule of thumb where you're going, well, I've got 5 of the 10 skills they're asking for, but I think I should have at least 6 or 7 before I apply. Did you do anything like that when you were?
Yeah, I'd look at what the skill was and see if maybe I was 50% of that skill or 25% of that skill. And the way that I am is I'm very tough on myself. So 50% I gotta basically like know that.
Mhm.
And so I'd look and I'd be like, okay, well, yeah, I can kind of do this one. I can kind of do that one. Okay, yeah, I got this one down. This might just be a rejection. I'm not gonna apply for it. Let me look at the next one.
Okay.
So I'd try to kind of go through the process in my head so that I didn't waste too much of my time going through the application. Because you upload your resume and then you have to fill out your resume on the next page because it doesn't upload your resume. And it takes you, 20, 30 minutes to go through a job app. And it's like, do I want to do that on this job that I'm 90% certain I'm gonna get declined for?
Right.
Or do I want to go look for a new one?
Right. Yeah, because there's that opportunity cost that you'd be losing
Yep.
by doing the 30-minute application. Now, once we move beyond the application, there's the interview.
Right.
How did the interviews go?
So I'm a little kind of confident in this because I'm a really good interviewer in job interviews. Like
What
I
makes you feel like you're a good interviewer?
every job I've interviewed for, I've gotten.
Okay,
And I'm able to kind of connect with the interviewer on more of a personal level.
got it.
Like I'm able to get to know them quickly, build that rapport and kind of make it a lighthearted interview so they're not, like trying to grill me
Mhm.
and I'm like kind of shutting down. I'm going to be wide open and
So
just be like, "Yeah, this is awesome."
yeah, you
Um,
make it personal and friendly.
and kind of the other thing that I've learned to trick myself into it is like when you're feeling nervous before an interview or like a stream or anything like that, I tell myself I'm not nervous, I'm excited. And the more you do that, I, just get so excited to do it.
Yeah,
And that
the
builds my
framing.
confidence. Yeah.
It's interesting how we can do that to ourselves with the language.
Mhm.
It's the same sort of thing of saying, "Oh, I have to go do the live stream," instead of, "Oh, I get to do the live stream."
Yep. I
You know?
remember when Neil took on interns last year, and we had to do interviews on stream for those positions. And there was
Just so we're clear too, we're talking about Neil Bridges. I don't think we mentioned his
yeah.
last name. Neil Bridges, he's been on this stream before. He's a friend of the show, a friend of AttackIQ. He also runs his own stream called Cyber Insecurity. So I want to make sure that I plug that because it's a great resource. I want to make sure everybody's clear of what Josh and I are talking about when we refer to Neil. So go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, so it was interviewing for an internship with Cyber Insecurity. Um, and it was gonna be live on stream, and I think the stream numbers were, like, almost 200 people. And then typically there's, like, over 1,000 views after the stream,
Yeah, it's
and
pretty
you're
popular.
sitting there and you're like, "I can't do this. I can't do an interview on stream. Like, I don't know the questions. I don't know what's going on. I've got all these other people that are gonna do this." And then, he picked the order and I was last. And he kind of sent me a
No.
message and he goes, you're gonna have to do better than the three other people. And
Yeah,
I'm
you're
like,
now headlining.
yeah. They're like, you're gonna be able to listen to their answers and you're gonna have to be better. And I'm like, this sucks.
And you also have to sit there and think about that for longer than they do now.
Yep. You have to sit there and you're like, oh, okay, well, they just took my answer. And it's like, oh man. And so it was probably 2 or 3 days before the interview, and I'm just like a ball of nervousness. And I'm just sitting there and I'm kinda telling myself, "No, you're not nervous. You're excited." I did that for like 2 days, and it was the Sunday before, and I was amped up. I was just so excited. It was super weird. Like,
Yeah.
I've never been like that before.
You switched from a ball of nerves, you changed that to excited. I love that when you can just kind of flip your perspective.
Yeah. Like, I was like, "Let's do this thing right now. I wanna get this done. I'm so excited." And I had
So
to wait like another 2 days.
do you approach all your interviews like that now?
I try to.
Any sort of interview.
Yep.
Now, I kind of cut you off while you were answering the question because you said when I asked you how the interview went, you said, "Oh, well, I'm great at interviews." And I asked you a bit more like, "Well, explain to me what does that mean?" You did that. So I want to go back to the question now. How'd the interviews go?
They went well. Like, I was very nervous coming from a non-technical background and having, like, actual job interviews with people in the industry and, knowing that they could sniff me out a mile away.
Mhm.
And I was just
Imposter
honest with
syndrome.
them. Oh, very much so. And, they'd ask me a question and I'd be like, honestly, I could probably try to remember this, but in my experience and what I would think would be the best option would be to go to Google and search this and see where it relates to that. Because I remember one of the questions was like, "Hey, what CVEs, if you found them, would you bring up to the client?" I'd be like, I'd want to look at all of them and see what was there, compare it to what it actually was and what the rating was so that I didn't give them any false information. He's like, "Okay, yeah, that's a really good answer." And it was really weird because they were like, "Yeah, no, that's a really good way to look at that." And I would always ask at the end of the interview, "How did I do so that I can," or, what feedback do you have for me so that I can improve on the next meeting that we have?"
Did you
And I
ever get any feedback from that?
both times.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, it was, "No, you did great." They're like, I've honestly, I've got no feedback for you. I think you're gonna be great, and I think you're gonna rock the next one." And I still remember, I think it was my second interview. "I'm not gonna give you a technical one because I'm pretty sure the first guy did that." And I'm like, He didn't, but I didn't tell him that." And I'm like, "Great, let's just have a conversation." And that's kind of how I approached it, was we're just having a conversation about this.
Mhm. Yeah, I think whenever we put that technical emphasis on the interview, that's when people get worried because especially if you don't know the range of the technicality,
Right.
right? If it's just this ambiguous, now I'm going to ask you technical questions,
Right.
people get scared. I remember when I used to work for ISS, I was a team lead, and I did a ton of these interviews. Like I was hiring people for support, I was doing interviews constantly. And they were definitely technical interviews, 100% technical interviews with a lot of scenario questions.
Mhm.
what I learned, so when I interviewed there, I thought it was the hardest interview I'd ever been through. What I learned was it only felt hard because they were trying to get an understanding of how I think,
Yep.
right? So scenario questions, we'd ask a question, and if I knew somebody was struggling, I didn't necessarily care. Like for me, that wasn't a no. Just because you didn't know this small little piece of technology or whatever, it's not necessarily a no. But what I'm going to do at that point is tell you what it is. I'm going to tell you, okay, so this is how this thing works. You don't know that, that's fine. I'm going to teach you that. Now that you know that, continue to solve the problem. Because what I want to understand is how well do you take new information and apply it to this problem?
Yep.
And to me, that's super important. I will say the one thing that would get an automatic no from me though is if they gave up.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
like I had scenario based questions, but they weren't super technical. It was like, "Hey, if you saw this CVE, what would you do?" Be
Mhm.
like, "Yeah, I'd bring that up because I know that one off the top of my head. That one's bad. Let's bring that up to these people because it's super important." And there was one where it was like, "Hey, say, how would you decide to bring up between a medium CVE or a high?" And I'm like, "Well, it depends. How many of the mediums do we have compared to how many of the highs? Are
Sure.
these actively exploited? Is the high, yeah, it's an exploit, but there's not really an active exploit out there."
Well, and to me, what that means is you think with context, right?
Right.
When I instead of you going, oh well, I'd search for CVE, 2015, 39, whatever the numbers are, you're going, well, hold on a minute. I need a bit more information for the
Yeah.
context around this. Otherwise, it's just a CVE.
Right. Yeah, otherwise it's just a number on the screen. I'm not gonna know anything about it. Give me a little bit more information. Do I have 15 of these and, one of those? Do I have 100 of these and
Mhm.
3 of those? It's gonna depend. Do these affect more important or higher value systems than these do?
Sure. Now, Josh, like I said, you're working at EY. We talked about that a little bit about how you get to learn different things. Do you have any sort of paths chosen that you're interested in currently?
Um,
Obviously, it can change, but do you have anything
yeah.
currently?
Right now, so I've done threat hunting for the last 5 months. I
Okay.
really enjoy it.
Yeah.
I'm currently doing, some incident response planning. That's completely new to me, so to me, that's just a learning experience.
Sure.
Um, Pen testing is still interesting to me. I wanna, see what else they might have that might interest me because I still don't know. Like, I absolutely love doing threat hunting, but there might be something out there that I love more, and I just don't know, and just trying to find it and
Mhm.
experience it. That's why, right now I'm doing the incident response planning and I've talked to people about, "Hey, can I shadow on some pen tests just to see how you guys do it and see if it's something that interests me?"
Well, Josh, I'm excited for you because it sounds like you're kind of walking into this world of all sorts of new possibilities, and that's awesome. Um, Before we bring in Kareen and we wrap things up, what I want to ask you is any advice. What's your top piece of advice that you could give our viewers right now?
Don't don't quit. Just keep doing it. If it's overwhelming, take a couple days off, get back into it. It's not the easiest thing. I remember times where I was studying and it was just massive overload. I had to take a break. I was like, "I'm gonna take a day break." I ended up taking a week because I couldn't do it anymore.
Just take a
But
break.
then I got back into it. Just know, hey, you can do it. Just put your mind to it. Take breaks when you need to. Just keep on trucking.
Josh, thank you so much for your words of advice. Kareen, why don't you come in, join us here? So we've got Kareen back on to give us her point of view as being TAC global head of talent acquisition. Kareen, what tips can you give our viewers for this week?
Yeah, and I would like to echo Josh's keep on trucking. I love that. But overall, it was so great to learn more about Josh's career path and experiences. For me, the thought I'm keeping with me today is leave yourself open to possibilities. And Keith, I just heard you echo that a second ago. So finding delight in the journey along the way, and not being afraid to go all in if the opportunity is right. So all about keeping your eyes open to the possibilities and learning, whether that's a YouTube video, challenges on Try Hack Me, or even embracing diverse professional and life experiences that build the soft skills that Josh mentioned were so important, because it's all about building connections. And so overall, I would love to challenge our audience today to think about the possibilities inherent in their own career right now. Yes, the opportunity search can be time consuming, exhausting, and often heartbreaking. So it is really important to find encouragement in realizing that there's growth, even in setbacks, and that growth is an option at every turn, regardless of the outcome. So again, another big thank you to Josh, and I hope everyone has a great day. Thanks for watching it, Hack Your Career.
Thanks, Kareen. So
Yeah.
before we go, I want to make a quick announcement. So Attack IQ Academy, big deal, right? Even bigger deal, we're going live. We're actually going to your cities now. We're going to be in person. We're starting our tour May 11th or 12th is the first class, and that's in the Virginia, DC area. But we're touring all over the US. Plus, we've got a class in London and another one in Dubai that we're going to be doing. If you're interested, I encourage you to go to attackiqacademy.live for more information, get your tickets. I hope to see you guys in class there. Kareen, Josh, thank you for being on the show. I appreciate it. Danielle, take us out.